Well, hello, and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWire TV video interview. I'm joined today by Ben Dyer. He's the Technical Director and the Chief Systems Architect of Taguchi Marketing. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Alex. It's good to be on.
It's great to have you here. Now, Ben, anyone visiting the Taguchi site can see that you're an Australian company with a world-beating marketing automation system with huge Australian and global brands as customers. But I always like to start at the beginning. Now, this is a slightly long-winded question, but give me a sec. Basically, can you please tell us what marketing automation is as we approach 2022 and how this is different to the typical marketing that people might think of with TV, radio, print and online ads, and of course all those PR stunts that the PR world is famous for?
Yep. So marketing is a really interesting field, and one of the things they do very well is sort of market their own terms. So I guess marketing automation is it's sort of a new way of expressing a whole bunch of ideas that have been kicking around for a while, but the automation comes in. And I think gives powerful new capabilities to those old ideas. So when we're talking about marketing automation, mostly we're talking about automating the execution, targeting delivery of messages to individual recipients. So unlike, say, a TV ad where you're producing one spot, it goes out to 1 million people or however many people are watching the program. And it's the same message for everyone at the same time. Yeah. Marketing automation enables you to execute individualized messages. So it's one message to one specific person at one specific time. So that's really powerful. And in a lot of ways, I think it bridges the gap between sales and marketing. So sales, it's kind of it's a one-to-one, it's dialogue. It's the salesperson finding out what the customer needs and having that give and take. Traditional marketing obviously is, here's the message, we're pushing it out, it's going to everyone. Automated marketing of the sort that's possible now is sort of in between. You're coming up with, you might think of them as like prototype conversations to have with your marketing prospects, and the systems that you put in place will enable those conversations to happen over time at scale. Based on particular responses or signals that you're getting from your customers.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole series of targeted bullseye type conversations as opposed to the scattergun approach of marketing. And one of the things that you've got your platform as a wide range of solutions. You've got performance and security, you've got database management, reporting, membership, loyalty, e-commerce, franchising. It sounds like a very mature platform that accommodates all of the 21st century realities of modern advertising and marketing. So, what else should we know about Taguchi?
So, obviously, this privacy and security stuff these days it's table stakes. Everyone has to do it. It's incredibly important. And if you lose the trust of your customers because of privacy or security issues, whether that's not honouring opt-out requests or whether it's all the way up to data breaches, etc. If you lose that trust, you're going nowhere. So that's critically important, and we put a huge amount of emphasis on it internally, as well as dealing with things like data sovereignty requirements, onshore hosting of data, etc. So obviously for our finance customers, that sort of stuff is especially important, but everyone is waking up to this, and everyone needs to do better. As an industry, we need to do a whole lot better on the privacy and security front. And that's kind of a bit of an alien concept for many marketers, but it's something that they'll be dragged to kicking and screaming, I think. And the ones who get there first are going to be in a much better position as a result of that. So I guess our platform philosophy, we probably differ from some of the major players in that we have this idea of, I guess, a sort of a T-shaped platform. So we have a wide breadth of capability across a number of different areas. So CRM, reporting, that sort of stuff. But where we're really, really focused, where the kind of stem of the T, the real depth of the functionality, is in that, I guess, classic marketing automation. It's the execution, personalization of content en masse. So what our platform does, in my view, probably better than anybody else, where we really hang a hat, is being able to automate content production automate targeting, automate segmentation, and actually deliver on the promise of getting the right message to the right person at the right time. Whereas we see a lot of the major platforms, it's a series of boxes to check. They want to check all the boxes, but there isn't necessarily any best of breed functionality in there. Mm-hmm. And in the current marketplace, we're sort of seeing among our clients a move more towards infrastructure as a service type platforms. So your Amazon AWS, your Microsoft Azure, etc. Those are obviously extremely mature, extremely scalable, and commodity priced. And as they sort of move up the tech stack, we're finding a lot of the the data flow stuff, data management, storage, is moving there outside of potentially the traditional marketing cloud type systems. Mm-hmm. And so, as a platform, we really need to have a differentiator that would be a reason why you would use Taguchi over hooking everything up in AWS with RDS and some Lambda functions to trigger off emails, which everyone can do. So yeah, that's being able to personalize and execute at scale. That's our bread and butter. That's where we really focus. And because we are sort of focused on delivering really deep capability in that space, we also prioritize integration. So being able to integrate with everything through from legacy systems to AWS to newer providers like Snowflake for data management. We integrate really well, and we play really well in a sort of an environment where you have a bunch of best of breed solutions hooked together.
Yeah.
So I guess that's our kind of view of the future. That's where we think people are going to go, and that's what we're targeting.
Well, it's always nice to play well with others, and in this modern world, you have to do that. I was also just thinking that when Facebook said the future is privacy, everybody laughed. But when Apple did things like make it difficult, well, they removed the ability of the mail program to sort of send back the trackers and to block them and to block the mail sender from knowing that you've opened the email or your location. So do any of those moves and changes have any impact on you, and how do you get around them if they do?
Yeah, there was it's a really good example, that one, actually, because there was sort of a bit of a panic in the industry earlier on, and possibly justifiably so for a lot of companies and a lot of marketers, because they do rely on those metrics. With Taguchi, almost going back to the marketing automation questions at the start, and the idea of 50% of the ad spend being wasted. In traditional media, the problem is that you don't have enough data. You screen your TV spot, and did anyone watch it? Well, you got Nielsen, you can kind of do a proxy, but really, and how much impact did that one TV spot have? Well, I guess if you kept on doing it, you could probably infer over time, if your sales were growing, that it might have had something to do with it, but who knows? The problem with digital is the opposite. There are so many metrics, there is so much data, that working out what to look at, what's important, becomes a really major issue. And a lot of companies kind of get sidetracked on metrics that aren't necessarily true reflections of their performance. And so they start optimizing for the wrong things, which can be pretty dangerous. With Taguchi, we are really focused on providing people with actionable information, the data that matters. And so among our clients, we really push for integration of transaction data, conversion data, on-site behavior, all the way back, so that we can track, okay, somebody has received an email, then they go on the website, then they buy the product. So when you have that level of data, whether or not they opened the email, which has always been a pretty rough proxy for them reading it, it's not that important. It's kind of it's a metric that is nice to have if you see anomalies in your overall conversion performance from those communications, but it's not the be all and end all. And I think having it widely known that these things are, opens and clicks, they're pretty soft metrics, open to interpretation. They don't necessarily mean that much. I think having that widely known is a positive thing for marketers, actually needing to focus on what matters. And I think it's also a really positive thing for consumers because, we do a lot of email. We like email. And the more people trust email and trust that this stuff is not, it's not tracking them, it's not monitoring their every move, that's good. People are going to use it more if they trust it.
Yeah. Well, people have said email's dead, but it's not. I mean, I use email every day. It's it's a very reliable medium.
Yeah, exactly. We started Taguchi in 2008, and about 2012, we started to get worried about all this social media, and everyone is trying to kill email, and Google had Google Wave, and that was going to kill email, and then all these other things were going to come and kill email, and we got a bit worried at the time, just thinking, is this a dying platform? Are we wasting our time here? But yeah, I think right now I'm probably more optimistic about the future of email than I have been in a very long time, particularly for kind of business to consumer communications. Individual people aren't communicating via email that much anymore, but that's okay because the email is kind of a it's the inbox for everything that you do with companies. All of your government stuff triggers emails off, your receipts, invoices, everything. They come to you through email, and I really don't see that changing. Not for a while, anyway.
Yeah, and obviously, to be clear, I mean, you also work with all the social media platforms. You can push messages out there as well, or are you only working on email?
So we can push messages to social media platforms. We've just recently done a line integration for a Japanese customer. So obviously that's huge there. And I guess the interesting thing about social media is it's an ever-changing set of companies. We're sort of tracking that as different brands rise and fall, and making sure we stay on top of that. There's also stuff that we do around pushing, for example, audiences up to Facebook and Google for retargeting. So you can hash email addresses, just obfuscate them, so you're not exposing anyone's private information, and then you're able to retarget people on social media companies' sites as well. So yeah.
Now, just another sort of a question without notice kind of thing. If a company comes to you, and every company is different, everyone's marketing spend is different, everyone's products are different, but what is a rough estimate of how long it takes for a company to integrate with your system? What's the short version of the process that a company and your sales, and engineering people sort of come together to figure out what's going on, figure out what they want, what you can deliver, and have a happy result?
Yeah, that one it's highly variable. It depends on the sophistication of a company's systems and what they need to get up and running immediately. Because you sort of have this, what's the minimum viable level of service, and then where do we want to end up in the future? I think we tend to integrate a fair bit quicker than most players in this space. So even a really significant integration for us would tend not to take any more than a few months. But yeah, we can have people up and running very quickly, a couple of days, and you can push data to us and you can send out email. So it really does depend. I think one of the positive things that we've seen in the last few years is companies really focusing on getting integrations up and running to start with, rather than just having the customer database in an Excel file on a shared drive and uploading that each Friday to send out their weekly newsletter. Companies are really understanding the value of doing that integration up front, getting everything from their website, e-commerce platform, point of sale, all feeding in. And I guess, with sort of the ongoing challenges because of COVID, digital transformation is really accelerating. And we're seeing a lot more of our customers integrating because of those sort of initiatives.
So what sparked the idea for Taguchi's founders to create the company? You mentioned that you've been in business since 2008, and how has that evolved since that time? Yeah,
so spark, I think, would probably be a nice way of putting it. It sort of grew out of drudgery and monotony. So back in 2000,
Pain points.
Exactly. Specifically my pain points, because I was the one experiencing the pain. So back in 2008, the world was a pretty different place. The whole concept of individual one-to-one email was actually not being widely used, and some companies were sort of playing around with it, but most brands they didn't really know how to use it. They just thought, oh yeah, we should do something through email. So they'd load up 1 million customers and just blast out the same email to them without giving any part of the process much thought, and still doing okay out of it because it was just so much cheaper than the alternative, which was loading up a database of 1 million postal addresses and printing off 1 million letters and mailing them. So it was kind of very much in its infancy, and we were working with Webjet, which at the time was a relatively early stage startup. And the travel industry is interesting because they have massive inventory, just a huge number of different flights to from different places at different times, different fare classes, all the rest. So huge inventory, significant customer base, and they're trying to email it, every couple of days. And so they would give us these spreadsheets full of flights, and we would have to load those into tables in emails and send them out to the customer database, which was a really manual process, really error prone. Having to constantly recode the email with all these different links and price points. And then, of course, they wanted to target it by state because, if you live in Melbourne, you don't care about flights from Sydney. So then that became, probably about 6 times the level of effort. And I was just spending my entire day cutting up those files and messing around with the spreadsheets. So over time, we developed templates which would basically ingest the entire spreadsheet, sort all the flights out, categorize them by origin, destination, etc., and then generate fully formed HTML emails, which we could just upload straight into the email tool. So that my effort involved in getting a single email out went from probably 8 hours to about 20 minutes.
That would have been a great day.
Yeah, that was a pretty good investment of time. And I guess that sort of kept on going from there. When that happens, and this is something that we see all the time even today, when you take this manual process that takes somebody a whole day to get out an email, and then you automate it and they can do it in 20 minutes, obviously the person is still employed for the whole day. So if their job is doing the email, that means they can produce a whole lot more. And if you can produce a whole lot more, then you can be much more segmented, much more targeted, because you've got all the content there. So yeah, you can start testing new things. You can start doing all of those things that they tell you to do when you're doing your marketing degree. All of that split testing and everything else, you can actually execute on those and still have time in the day for lunch and dinner and whatnot. So Taguchi, I guess, started off as, hey, this is taking too much work. There's a better way. Let's automate. And then we sort of realized, now that we've automated, we can be a lot smarter about what we're doing with the same overall effort. So we then got into the multivariate testing and real-time optimization. We pulled some techniques that were being used in direct mail, and they're decades old. Direct mail. If you talk to direct mail people, they are really, really smart about their testing and optimization, just because the medium is so expensive. Whereas email, it tends to be, well, it costs you next to nothing, so just blast it out, who cares? But we were stealing those ideas from direct mail and tweaking them to work a bit better with the particular problem space that email has, where you've got all these variations, you've got real-time data coming in, you've got so much more data. How do you actually make decisions on the basis of it? So we were tweaking those algorithms to work better. Ended up getting a patent in the US and Australia for multivariate optimization in email, and our system, ended up being capable of sending out emails with different variations of content, measuring the response from customers based on those variations, and then in real time deciding which variations were doing better and sending more of those. So that's really powerful. It was when was this? 2009-ish. Nobody was really doing that in a sort of production sense. There were experiments, but it wasn't standard functionality anywhere. Yeah, exactly. So we had this great idea and thought, yeah, this is the future. Everyone's going to be amazed and want to buy it. So
And they were.
Did a couple
They
of
had,
trips to
they
the
had to
US.
learn about it. Yeah.
Spoke to email service providers, and they sort of said, yeah, that's really cool, but our customers don't have the content, they don't have the staff, the industry isn't there basically, and so they didn't really want to. There was some interest, but nobody really said, yes, that's great, we're gonna deploy this tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we sort of came back and gave things a bit of a think and decided the best thing to do would be to start doing our own email distribution. And obviously that's a bit of a thorny kind of issue because of spam constraints and IP reputation and everything else. So we took a little while to sort of navigate all of that, but we ended up with a system that was built from the ground up around the idea of one-to-one personalization. So every single email that Taguchi sends is always unique, and it's always got that full personalization, segmentation, targeting capability, even if customers aren't actually using it at the time. So yeah, our system is, rather than being like a one-to-many distribution tool, like a lot of the legacy email service providers were, it's always been a one-to-one personalized system. And I think that's, stood us in really good stead since we were started, because applications for this kind of one-to-one targeting just keep on coming up. And it's very clear that, systems, like nowadays, it's basically table stakes in the email service provider world. But it's kind of been an awkward retrofit for a lot of companies trying to move away from this batch and blast, as they called it. Here's a CSV file with 1 million email addresses. Here's an HTML file containing the content. Send that to all those addresses. It's a bit of a different process when you're doing a separate one for each individual person.
You list some of Australia's most trusted brands on your homepage. So are there any customers you'd like to highlight and any customer success stories you'd like to share?
Yep. So we're pretty proud of our client base. We think that basically all of our clients get it. They get the value of personalization, they get the value of automation, and we've been kind of going along that journey with all of them, across a whole bunch of different industries. Domino is obviously a really good partner for us. We've done a couple of case studies with them on email production and personalization, and I think one of the things that we've helped them do is really get down to that, producing thousands and thousands of variations on email content, but still kind of keep it as a broadcast. So they have a very successful, very high volume email program, and I guess by enhancing that rather than replacing it completely, we're able to bring in more and more personalized content into just a regular daily email. So even though it kind of looks like a standard email that is the same for everyone, it's actually, everything in it is actually personalized. And that personalization is, based on individual buying behavior, and it's based on what Domino's local franchisees want to sell in their local market as well. So yeah, that's been, I guess, a really good journey to go through with them. They're a thriving company and doing really, really good work in this space, which you would think, selling pizza, it's not really kind of a very technical thing, but they really get digital at a corporate level, and they are executing very, very well in this space.
So you mentioned COVID before. Everybody knows it's been a massive disruptor to everyday life and been a huge accelerator for digital interaction, transformation, outreach, and the cloud. So what were the lessons that Taguchi learned over the last 2 years of the pandemic? And, how did it change your products and services? How did the pandemic change marketing?
Yeah, so for us, it's been I guess an interesting exercise. We've got systems in Los Angeles as well as Melbourne, as well as being hosted in AWS and Azure. So we've got kind of a hybrid infrastructure environment, and some of the travel restrictions have made, I guess, servicing interesting, but it's sort of an exercise in ensuring that your business continuity plans, disaster recovery plans are all up to scratch and working, that you've got the redundancy to cope with all of these changing restrictions and rules around what you can and can't do, where you can and can't go. We found because we're ISO 27001 certified, we've had all of those plans for years. The actual transition to remote work for us was pretty straightforward. It's been interesting navigating the dynamics of taking on new staff during this period and kind of trying to induct people into the culture of the company when you've only even met them once to hand over their laptop and that's it. But yeah, I think we've been able to navigate that okay. From a technological perspective, I don't think we've actually had to make that many changes. To us, it's sort of been almost like a moment of vindication in that all of this stuff that we've been preaching about for years and years, digital transformation, automation, that kind of digital mindset, everyone is getting it now. And so I think it's kind of been in some ways a positive moment for us. But on the other hand, it's also been, I guess, personally pretty difficult. And for a lot of our clients, particularly travel and hospitality, it's been a struggle. Luckily, I guess the brands that we're partnered with are pretty strong, and they've been able to use the time to make positive changes, improve efficiency, all the rest. So I think as things come back, they're going to be really, really well placed for the future. But yeah, it's been a really interesting time, and I think probably more as observers of change than necessarily going through an enormous amount of change ourselves.
So to change gears for a moment as we get towards the end of the interview, I always like to ask, what is a memory you can share of your first computer?
First computer. I could talk about this topic for hours. So my first computer, my parents bought a Mac Plus when I was 1 year old, which, they were brand new at the time. So a bit of a giveaway of my age there. But so Mac Plus, last time I checked, I had some saved Mac Paint files from 1987. And some of my relatively early childhood memories are playing various games on the Mac Plus. So that was probably, I guess, a formative experience for me. It's interesting, though, they kept it for about 10 years. So what started off as a really revolutionary computer at the time was incredibly dated, almost dinosaur age thing by the time they bought a new one. Which, is, obviously having lived through it yourself, the pace of technological change in computing from 1987 through to 1997 was astounding. Whereas these days, if you take a computer from, if you take a MacBook from 2011, put it next to a MacBook from today, there are some differences. Not exactly groundbreaking in a lot of ways.
Well, the M1 chip's pretty amazing.
The M1 the M1, I've probably been more excited about that than just about anything else that's happened in computing in the last 10 years. So
I love that I'm using a MacBook Air right now, and I love that Zoom and Teams do not cause the fan to spin because there is no fan. The only fan that this MacBook Air has to worry about is the fan that's sitting right in front of it. Because I'm such a big fan of the Mac.
They're great. They're great, and I'm looking forward to once the 16-inch M1 MacBook Pros are in stock, getting a couple of those in the company because they look like great machines as well.
They are. They're fabulous. It's
nice.
Really cool, really cool, and you're gonna love it. Let's just leave it at that. But you're gonna absolutely love it. They're amazing machines. And even Reddit came out with a blog post explaining the value of time, that it costs for their developers and the amount of time this saves. They were talking about exporting some sort of Android app, basically rendering it so that it has been completed, and it is taking 45 minutes or something, and it's taking less than half that on a MacBook M1. So
Wow.
with Pro or Mac, so it's just a big time saver. And they say it's just worth giving everybody that is doing development one of these MacBook Pros because they get a lot of time back.
Yeah.
It's like the 8 hours it took you to do the data
Yeah,
entry down to 20
exactly.
minutes.
Exactly.
Same
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really what technology should be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've been a Mac user my whole life, so it's been interesting seeing Apple change over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Ben, what is a short version of your own history in the world of tech that has led you to becoming the technical director and chief systems architect? And what is a typical day in the life of a chief systems architect and technical director?
Are there any typical days? I'll have to think about that one, but I'll answer the first part of the question first.
Sure.
So, yeah, I guess having started on the Mac pretty early on, I've always been interested in computing. Got into HyperCard stack development at an early age. HyperCard is just a great program that kind of tied
People
together.
still miss it today.
Yeah,
People
yeah,
still
absolutely.
pine for it.
Tying together, graphics and code and database-like stuff as well. Really, really cool. And yeah, so I guess that was probably my intro into the whole thing, scripting these little stacks and making little interactive games and that kind of stuff. Moved up to C and that sort of thing for a while. Then I guess finishing high school, starting uni around the time that probably just before Web 2. The Web 2 mindset was taking off with Ajax and JavaScript that was actually usable in the browser and that kind of stuff. I got into that, dabbled in some PHP and Ruby and Python and everything else. And I guess, yeah, my first job was working on a team that managed an SMS gateway for 3 back in the day. And so we were kind of doing this digital messaging type stuff, real time, with a fairly high degree of automation as well. And the digital agency that I was working for then sort of started moving into email, and we picked up Webjet as a client who were just starting an email marketing program, and that's sort of where that impetus to develop the thing that became Taguchi came from. So yeah, I guess it probably hasn't been a strategic series of job shifts for me. It's been much more of an organic process of, well, here I've learned this. How else can I apply it? And you just keep on tacking on, other things that you've learned and applying them in new ways. So yeah, it's sort of been a very organic process for me, but I think it's been a pretty good one. Second part of the question was,
well, it was about what's the typical day in the life for you, and what are some of the advances that you've been able to pioneer at Taguchi? That might give us an insight into a typical day for you.
So a typical day for me, it's changed a lot over the years. Starting out, Taguchi was as my co-founder Dean, me, and one employee, and so we were all really cross-functional. I am becoming less and less cross-functional as time goes on. Mostly it's my team doing stuff, writing code. I write nowhere near as much code as I would like these days, but it's yeah, when
that's why you have employees in a team, and
yeah, exactly. When you have other people doing that sort of stuff, it's the parts of your role that make sense are the ones that you can articulate to somebody and give away. So you're just kind of left with the weird ones that don't necessarily make much external sense. So yeah, it's a combination of everything for me, I guess. I would spend a fair bit of time, making sure that we're on top of all of our service metrics. So we have SLAs with all of our clients, and those things need to be maintained. So, keeping abreast of any issues that might crop up, checking in with our research and development team on new functionality. We've got a really good project manager now, which has been great because that was previously, I guess, part of my role, and it's really hard to kind of come up with, from a user perspective, what are all the things we need to add over time, and then actually get into coding them, and then worry about the infrastructure that those things run on. So it's been really good to be able to give her ownership of that product and our new features, and she's able to keep much more, I guess, in touch with all of our clients, and be more strategic about the functionality that we add. So that's been really good. But I'm checking in on that sort of thing each day. Then a lot of it is kind of unblocking team members. So everyone's doing their jobs, but people
can get stuck.
Yeah, exactly. You get stuck, and they just need a bit of knowledge that they haven't been exposed to in their role. And I guess because I've sort of been there since the very outset, I'm often reasonably well placed to at least have an idea where they can look to find the answer. So there's a lot of that as well. So yeah, it's bits and pieces, and then just trying to keep on top of our changing industry, and what's the current big thing, what's the next big thing going to be, and where are the threats and opportunities in that.
Yeah. Now, I know that in the movie House of Gucci, we have Lady Gaga and we have Adam Driver, and maybe Adam Driver can play you in the upcoming House of Taguchi movie. But it made me think, where does the name Taguchi come from? Sounds Japanese.
Yeah, so yes, it is Japanese. It was interesting. We were in these early meetings with the Japanese client that we have, and I think they were a bit disappointed when it turned out that actually no, we're not Japanese at all. We do now have somebody who speaks Japanese, but we're not a Japanese company. So Genichi Taguchi was a Japanese engineer in the post-World War II period, and he worked with the Japanese auto industry, which was at that time undergoing some enormous change in sort of process and scale as well. And Genichi Taguchi developed, I guess, methodologies around continuous improvement and testing that enabled the Japanese auto industry to really become the sort of the juggernaut that they are today. And that's a lot of that is based on their process control and manufacturing techniques and philosophies around continuously refining tolerances and material specifications and everything else to make the absolute most reliable product they can at whatever price point. So
you were inspired by that name.
We were inspired by the name. A lot of people think because there is a Taguchi method, which is often used or sometimes used in marketing for multivariate optimization based on limited sample sizes. So it's something that you occasionally come across in direct mail. We don't actually use his method, but it's the philosophy, I guess, the principle of continuous improvement and optimization that inspires us as a company, and that's kind of where, like what I was saying before, that's really where we see ourselves adding the most value.
Yeah, he was. I mean, we all talk about digital transformation today, but he was doing manufacturing transformations, strategic transformation. He was doing all that decades ago. So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Now, how do you think the marketing automation industry will evolve, and how do you think Taguchi will evolve over the next couple of years, and where do you think it'll be in the 2030s? I mean, do we already live in the Minority Report world, or is that still to come?
Yeah, I really think we do in a lot of ways. It's not necessarily recognised by the public as widely as it could be, but when you look at the sort of data sets that companies are collecting now, it's Minority Report, if anything, was undersold the amount of targeting tracking that's going to exist, or that already exists, let alone that will exist in 2030. I think I'm not seeing any kind of major step changes, I guess, in where we're headed. I mean, people rarely do see those sort of step changes, but I think the acceleration of current trends is probably going to be disruptive enough. There's this idea that software is eating the world, and I think digital distribution really is eating the world. A lot of the things that we see as traditional media, traditional, say, billboards in the streets, TV, radio, etc. A lot of those are going to be kind of subsumed by true digital equivalents of the same channels. So obviously, in billboards, we've got digital billboards, which are going to become smarter and smarter. The ones at bus stops, If it detects that your phone's nearby, that there's somebody there, it can display a different thing. If there's a way of tracking based on some sort of identifier, then it can display something targeted to you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing something a couple of years ago where one of those digital billboards had broken down, sitting in the middle of the street and in some sort of city square, and it was the back end that was on, and as people were walking up to it, their faces were being inside of the green squares that were basically doing facial recognition, so they could tell if you had seen the ad before, and so they're already doing that. That's the Minority Report type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's it's not just faces. It's your phone. It's the Chinese government's done a bunch of work on gait recognition. So even if you've got a mask on, it can work out who you are based on your walk, which is apparently distinctive. So yeah, the number of ways that you can track people is enormous, and I think that's gonna get used in more and more. The other one, I think we're going to see things like the traditional video and radio, traditional TV and radio, sort of get subsumed by Spotify, that kind of always-on streaming service, and obviously Spotify does ads right now, but there's an enormous amount of potential in terms of targeting personalized ads there. Also, all the streaming services. I hate saying this because I don't want to make it come true, but I think it's going to come true. They're all going to start doing ads, just like cable TV started as the premium no ad product, and then put as many ads as free to air just about. So I would see ads cropping up in Netflix and everything else. And when you think about the amount of data that they have and the potential for integration through custom audience type functionality as well, I think probably there's massive scope for targeted video advertising. And not just, working out, okay, you like cars, so we'll show you a car ad, but even programmatic kind of re-editing of pre-recorded video content. So it goes, okay, well, you've got kids on your Netflix account, so we'll assume you're a family. We're going to show you this car ad, but all the interior stuff is going to be a family rather than a single person or a couple or whatever. So I think we're going to see a lot of that, and stuff that is so finely targeted and seamlessly targeted that people don't even realize. Right now we're, I think, in the infancy of that kind of omnipresent targeting, and you sort of notice these creepy. You searched a washing machine on Amazon, and now all you see as you go around the internet is ads for washing machines, which is really brain dead kind of stuff. But
can be annoying once you've made the purchase.
Oh,
and they're still advertising it to you. But we've also heard of where Facebook knew somebody's daughter or someone was pregnant before they did.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're gonna, I think we're gonna see that become a lot more sophisticated, and I think essentially the sort of targeting that you can currently do in email or on websites, that is going to be omnipresent across pure digital channels, but also this sort of hybrid digital real world channels that we have in digital billboards or displays in shopping centres, all that kind of stuff.
And let's not forget the augmented reality glasses that are coming this year. I mean, coming this decade.
A game changer. And then you've got the augmented reality glasses can detect that you're looking at an ad, so it can block it out or replace it with a new ad.
Yeah. Ad blockers on steroids.
Yeah.
Ad hijackers.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy stuff.
It's really interesting seeing the sort of potential that some of these technologies have. But I think that's why I say it's probably more of a continuation of the same thing. It's a continuation of the trend for these personalization technologies and capabilities that we think of as being digital native capabilities are just extending to everything.
So look, my second last question is to simply ask you, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received to help you get where you are today?
Yeah, geez. It's a tough one, narrowing it down, and I don't necessarily have a great memory for quotes, so I probably won't be able to sum it up in a really pithy kind of way, but we'll give it a go anyway. I think for me, it's the idea that you have to be clear on your objectives, and it sounds really simple, but you sort of can't get anywhere unless you know where you're trying to get. And you see so many cases where sight of the objectives has been lost, and there's a whole lot of floundering going on there. So being clear on the objectives. Once you're clear on the objectives, you have a plan to achieve that, and then just setting up a process where you just take a step, however small, in line with that plan. And one quote I can remember is that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. I think that's a really good one, because it's not, you always also see people getting kind of set on specific plans that they've made and not realizing that needs to change. And I think, the 99% of the value of having a plan is the process that went into creating that plan. No plan survives contact with reality for very long, so you're going to have to continuously reevaluate that. But just having the plan, going through that process of planning, and setting up a process where you're just taking some small step, at least each day, in accordance with that, is really important. Because if you're focusing on those goals that you set, you need to have objectives and goals. But if you're focused on that, you're sort of emphasizing the gulf between where you are now and where you're trying to get to. Whereas if you focus on the plan and whatever small steps you can take each day, you get there, or at least you get closer before you know it.
Yeah, well, they talk about if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I think it might have been Yogi Berra or somebody who says words to the effect that if you don't know where you're going, you'll get there. He always said those funny quotes.
Well, exactly.
And eating the elephant one bite at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess that's for me. That's been fairly true in my career to date. There hasn't been I've had goals, but it's been sort of an iterative process, and you kind of try something. If that's working for you, great, keep on doing it. If it's not working, you reevaluate, replan. Do what's necessary, and it all seems to go along organically, I guess.
So what's your final message for iTWire viewers and readers, and for your current and future customers and partners?
Thanks for listening. Hope it was in some way helpful. If you're interested, if you disagree, if you agree, if you think any of it would be relevant to your company or where you're at, then please do get in touch. One of the things I like most about the role I have is, being able to solve problems, being able to solve my problems, but being able to solve other people's problems as well. And I think that's something that we, everyone at Taguchi has this positive mindset towards actually solving problems and overcoming challenges. And so that's something I really like doing. And obviously, with all the changes that are happening in the last couple of years, I think we're sort of at an inflection point in history. Enormous changes across a whole number of different industries. And I think it's really important, while these changes are occurring, to be open-minded and, I guess, exploratory in how you approach things, and trying new things, getting exposed to new ideas. So I'd really enjoy a conversation with any readers that are interested.
Yeah. Well, Ben Dyer, co-founder, technical director, and chief systems architect of Taguchi Marketing, thank you very much for your time. I wish you the best of success, and I hope we can talk again in the future.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you. Bye-bye.